King Alboin. How and why did the Lombards end up in Italy?
In the era of the Great Migration of peoples, Italy, of course, became the main theater of military operations. Barbarian tribes plundered it, conquered it, and then the conquerors became victims before the blow of other barbarians or the last Romans, who still dreamed of the revival of Pax Romana. After the famous Gothic Wars of Justinian the Great, Italy returned to the Romaic bosom. But at what cost? At the cost of everything, as they say. And the price was really too high for this. Yes, the Romans defeated the Ostrogoths, but for some reason they did not take into account that there was already a queue of applicants for Italy behind them, and again everything went according to the ill-fated scenario when the Lombards came here. They were led by the legendary King Alboin, who was born in about 530 in Pannonia. From childhood was inextricably linked with the art of war, which he demonstrated in the wars with the Avars and Gepids. Like all the most famous barbaric triumphants of these times, Alboin began his bright career under the suzerainty of the Romans, who called him to confront serious threats in the face of the Gepids and Avars, who were also invited by the Romans. It is difficult to say whether he was the son of the king of the Lombards, because studying his biography, every time you come to the conclusion that this man achieved what he wanted and did not receive by birthright. This stern man literally exuded an aura of unshakable strength that made him respected and feared. But his strength was not only in his generalship talent and authority, but also in a lively mind, which, together with cunning, led to amazing results. When it became clear to everyone on the continent that the Franks were a real threat, Alboin was one of the few monarchs and, it seems, the only Lombard who married a Frankish princess, the granddaughter of the great King Clovis I, and thereby concluded an alliance with them. And to defeat the Gepids, he teamed up with the Avars, agreeing to give them the Gepid lands if successful. So he defeated one enemy, his fellow Germans, personally killing their king and making a wine cup out of his skull. Here he also found a second wife, the daughter of the same king. For Alboin it was rather just a trophy, which he unharnessed as a thing in the essence of a slave concubine. Later, this princess still became his wife when he and the Gepids made an alliance against the Avars. How quickly allies and enemies change places, don't they? He could not defeat the Avars and was forced to leave Pannonia together with all his people. So fate brought Alboin to Italy. It was a distant 568. Back in 553, Italy was in the hands of Byzantium, which, nevertheless, they left unprotected. A year later, the whole of northern Italy was under the rule of Albinus almost without resistance. By 572, most of Italy was under his control, with the exception of some lands and cities like Rome. And only Pavia provided Alboin with proper resistance, having held out in the siege for as many as 3 years. The new ruler of Italy chose Verona as his capital. Despite his barbaric origin, Alboin proved to be an excellent administrator, dividing Italy into 36 parts, each of which was managed by a person appointed by him. This system resembled a full-fledged feudalism, because each of these rulers was autonomous, had his own army, and led his conquests. Nevertheless, Alboin did not rule Italy for a long time. In the same year 572, he was killed as a result of a conspiracy organized by the same Gepid princess who sincerely hated her husband, and there were good reasons for that. Alboin mocked her, humiliated her in every possible way, killed her father, and on the fateful day even forced her to drink wine from his skull once. This was the last straw. As a result, after that drunkenness, a feast, friends with spears were waiting in Alboin's chambers, but his sword disappeared somewhere. What a shame, but not for the king. So Alboin fought off with dignity with one stool, but in the end he died anyway. As you know, the Lombards lasted in Italy for quite a long time, right up to 774, until they were integrated into the Carolingian Empire. Despite the fact that the Romans eventually lost all influence in Italy, nevertheless, the problems in the relations of the Lombards with Rome did not go away, and only the sides changed. If earlier the kings opposed the emperors, then over time their main rival became the popes, who really wanted to expand their influence.